Hello everyone and welcome back to BreatheVR. I'm Deepa Mann from Future Screens NI, who are proud to sponsor BreatheVR. Tonight I'm joined by Deepa Mann-Kler. And this might take me a while to go through all this, just to let you know, because Deepa is involved in quite a lot of fascinating activities. So Deepa is an award-winning visual artist, innovator, author, and the chief executive of Neon, which is a health technology company. She's also a visiting professor in immersive futures at Ulster University. She is an equality commissioner, a member of the GMC, a TEDx speaker, and much, much more. Deepa identifies societal challenges and finds completely new and often beautiful solutions. She's a mother and an advocate for mental health and well-being. As a visual artist, Deepa explores concepts of belonging and identity by creating artwork that is deeply rooted in the communities which surround her. And I would advise anyone on the call or listening to this event to check out Deepa's mixed reality street art experience, art which fuses the physical and digital worlds in Belfast. It is incredibly beautiful. But Deepa has also developed Suru, which is a mixed reality project exploring peace building in the digital and physical spaces of both Belfast and Hiroshima. But tonight we are here to explore the potential of immersive and mixed reality technology in the parenting journey and in the promotion and protection of well-being. The ongoing COVID-19 crisis has brought technology to the fore of our lives, but many of us have yet to tap into the full potential of technological solutions. New and emerging technologies, if used correctly and ethically, have the potential to empower people. Deepa herself is pioneering solutions which, through both mixed reality and AI, have the overall objective of improving parental experiences. She has also developed immersive experiences which both promote and protect well-being. Before I hand over to Deepa, I would like to ask that as many of you listening in join the conversation. You can raise your hand or post in the chat or post a comment if you're watching via Facebook. If you post in the chat after Deepa has finished her presentation, I will invite you to unmute and speak. If you do not wish to speak, just stay silent and I will share the comment on your behalf. And we will now hear from Deepa.
Thank you for that introduction and thank you for inviting me here today. So if you just bear with me while I do the sharing screen thing. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yep. Right, so today we're going to look at the power of immersive technologies and discover its creative and therapeutic capabilities. And I'm going to share my practice as somebody that's working in this space with my company Neon, but also as an artist and also in my role as visiting professor of immersive futures, to look at how we can use immersive technologies to enhance health and well-being. So all the best stories have a beginning, and this is where I start mine today. These are my parents shortly after they arrived in England from India in 1961. And 55 years later, on the 1st of January 2016, my father passed away peacefully in Leicester Royal Infirmary. So the irony was that in January 2016 was and is one of the highlights of my artistic career, when my installation Neon Dogs formed part of Lumiere London, run by Artichoke. Now over 1.8 million people came to see Lumiere. But in spite of that highlight, I could no longer be in my studio. So I bedded myself down for the grief that was to follow. And 11 months later, we are on a family break to Iceland. And we stumble across Björk's latest album, Vulnicura, available to experience in VR at the Harper in Reykjavik. Now, on that day, I'd been feeling really unwell and considered staying at home, but took a couple of Nurofen and struggled on. By the end, I had become so immersed in the VR experience of dancing with Bjork that something remarkable happened. I did not feel unwell. Something lifted and I felt lighter than at any point in the preceding 11 months. I decided right there that I needed to find out more about virtual reality, and that was November 2016. And that was my first inkling of technology connecting me back with my own humanity. So we arrived back from Iceland and I set up a new company called Neon, and we built Retne, my first virtual reality experience, which we then took out to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas in 2017. Now in Retne, the player is a tourist traveling through VR land, accompanied by a tour guide called Little Mo, who is voiced by the actor Michael Smiley. It's playful, it's interactive, and it engages the user with humor and sensory triggers. Retne is the mirror image of Enter. And in the story, you enter through a mirror. And when you return to that mirror, having completed your journey, the mirror reads Retne. Much of the narrative is a metaphor for the concept of virtual reality. So the mirroring of the real world to create new and exciting environments and possibilities. The journeys that you can go on and the tasks that you must complete to further that journey. And at the heart of Retne is actually a quote from Aristotle, where creativity and technical capability have to work hand in hand and rely on each other completely. Neither can work on its own, but when they do work together, it results in the whole being greater than the sum of all its parts.
These books haven't been able to drop their letters for years now, so there's been no new stories. It's crazy, right? Oh man, look what you did! We're going to get new stories! That's brilliant! New stories!
So after coming back from South by Southwest, I start to research the health and therapeutic benefits of VR. And then Neon is invited to a pain hackathon to basically develop solutions for people living in pain. I learned that 150 people die every day from prescribed opioids, which is the same as 3 planes crashing every week. And for years, drug companies have lied about how addictive opioids are and how the stark reality is that daily long-term use can actually make your pain worse. And I learned that the health service in the UK writes over 28 million prescriptions for opioids annually. And I learned that up to 20% of the world's population, that is 1.5 billion people, are in chronic pain every day, which is persistent pain lasting 3 months or more. So at the Pain Hackathon, we're invited to develop solutions for people living in pain. And on that day, we hear from one man and how he's actually lost all the enamel on his teeth because he has been so sick from the side effects of the prescribed pain medication. And in preparation for the Pain Hackathon, we researched the benefits of deep breathing and learned that we breathe over 23,000 times each day, and how this can be one of nature's most powerful medicines. We learned that the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text, and 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual. So on the day, we use all of this learning and combine the very human act of breathing with cutting-edge immersive technology, and we build BreatheVR. So what happens in BreatheVR? Once the headset is on, you are in a bright, colourful meadow, listening to calm music and birds. You inhale deeply through your mouth, through your nose, and then exhale deeply through your mouth. At which point this breath is detected by the mic, which makes the leaves in the VR environment rise and fall. And the combination of being in VR and using your breath to affect your environment maximizes your feeling of immersion and distraction from your pain. Now, while the demo worked really well on the day of the hackathon, we wanted further evidence that BreatheVR does reduce pain. So we conducted a study using BreatheVR with patients suffering from fibromyalgia and spinal fusion surgery, two of the most painful conditions around. And after using BreatheVR for as little as 3 minutes, 80% of our patients reported a de-escalation in pain. And not just a slight drop, but in some cases, it actually halved people's pain. That was enough evidence for me to develop BreatheVR further and launch it on the Oculus store. So our third project is an augmented reality game called Whack-A-Mo, built for children in hospital undergoing routine cannulas for chemotherapy treatment. When these procedures do not happen, the kids can often become distressed and it's expensive to the NHS. So the play element of the game maximizes the children's attention. And by adding 3 difficulty levels, it ensures that it caters for a range of ages from 8 to 12 years. And that children will play the game repeatedly. And to further enhance the children's attention, this game is only available in the hospital setting. Co-design and co-production are central values to this process and at the heart of everything we do. Key to the success of Whack-A-Mo has been that we were approached by play therapists who are really keen to use new technologies. Another project that we have developed is called Talking Sense, which is an augmented reality conversation training tool that uses artificial intelligence to enable conversation, to support parents to better understand the behavior of their children with autism, and better enable coping strategies and appropriate interventions. Talking Sense enables a parent to practice in real time, real life challenging behavior scenarios and strategies for supporting and understanding their child. So bringing up a child with autism can be challenging for parents who often have poorer mental health outcomes. But by giving parents access to proactive strategies to help their child's needs has been shown to have a positive mental health benefit for parents. And in Talking Sense, the parents engage in a conversation with the character Ben, who represents their child. And with Ben, parents can practice in real time, real life challenging behavior scenarios and strategies for supporting and understanding their child. And in Talking Sense, we practice a routine evening scenario to facilitate ease of transition from watching TV to the bedroom with minimal upset. Now, Discover ME is another project that we're working on, and it uses VR animation to share insights into the lives of people living with ME. And it uses the power of empathy so that the viewer remembers what they see, hear, and experience with their entire body and not just their minds. With VR, we put professionals in scenes in the middle of real life stories that are normally never seen, heard, or experienced to help lessen the gap between actual events and personal experience. And now with about 20% of people who have had COVID experiencing long COVID, where symptoms are really similar to ME, the need for this VR experience has become even more urgent.
My name is Joan. I am a mother, a wife, and a daughter. My world was always one of vibrant health, a happy family life, and with a career I love. But in 1999, I was plunged into a world I never knew existed, and I was stripped of everything I held precious. Overnight, I went from living life to the full to being rendered bedbound. There was no warning and no time to prepare for the nightmare ahead. I woke up with what felt like a flu, and I had no reason to believe it wouldn't resolve in a few days. But as the months passed by without improvement, and routine blood tests came back normal, I was told it was just a virus.
So the power of creating new realities or enhancing and breaking realities comes from embodiment. This is how the brain processes sensory information that the body perceives, and is the brain telling the body what to do. So VR offers up using the whole body as a controller. There is neuroscience research supporting the thesis that specific VR experiences can be created for specific emotional states. And at the heart of this is embodied cognition, which is the idea that the mind is not only connected to the body, but that the body influences the mind. So if the body can affect the mind, then think of the capability that VR offers in terms of altering how we feel or perceive the world. Emotion is at the core of making VR content that is compelling. And as builders of the virtual world, we can choose what people will feel. And when you add to this music, story, and graphics, this becomes a really powerful tool. So VR has the capability to retrain our neural networks and pathways in a really positive way through a process called neuroplasticity, where we can actually rewire our brains and change it on a cellular level. And one of the best examples of neuroplasticity is from the rubber hand experiment, where the brain believes the illusion that the rubber hand is its own. See how quickly and convincingly this happens.
We're going to do a little demonstration here called the rubber hand illusion. It's going to be a little scary.
This illusion may look like fairground fun, but it reveals one of the most important new ideas in brain science.
Thank you. Right there. Good. And can you put this hand down right over here and just curl it up like the rubber hand's curled up a little bit? All right. Now, what I'm going to do is try to position the rubber hand so it looks like it's your own.
Okay.
Okay, could you imagine that being your own hand, kinda?
Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to stroke your fingers simultaneously, the rubber finger and your real finger, and hopefully this will convince you that the rubber hand is your own, that your brain will actually adopt this hand.
In the illusion, simply watching the rubber hand being stroked at the same time as the real hand is enough to trick the brain into adopting it as its own.
We like weird. And slowly but surely, you should feel that the hand you're looking at is actually part of your body.
Feels like you're touching my hand with that one.
Right, so it feels like this is your hand that I'm touching, right?
Yes.
You okay?
Yeah.
Good. Try that at home with your kids. Yeah. The rubber hand illusion is a wonderful example of how multisensory perception can influence how we perceive our own body. I mean, that's how deep multisensory perception runs.
So VR is being used to manage phobias, PTSD, depression, mental health, anxiety, and rehabilitation. In this next short piece are interviews with Skip Rizzo, Walter Greenleaf, and Brennan Spiegel, all of whom have been using VR for health and therapy for the last 30 years. And here they talk a little bit about their work.
This is a virtual reality exposure therapy session for treating PTSD. It's an immersive experience designed to help patients confront trauma from conflict zones.
Virtual reality is, in my field, a psychologist's dream. To be able to build simulated environments, put people in, observe how they respond, help them to respond differently to support their therapeutic goals. That's the essence of why we do therapy or human research.
And this field, known as clinical virtual reality, is growing, challenging popular preconceptions of VR as a novel gaming device to include advanced medical and psychological treatments. It's being used for conditions ranging from dementia to chronic pain, as well as providing training in remote healthcare sessions.
You know, what's amazing about VR, unlike any other audiovisual medium ever created, is how emotionally provocative it is. Because our brain was never designed to live in two realities at once. Like, that's not evolutionarily required of us. We just accept the reality that we're given. And so in VR, you feel, your brain believes that it is physically present in some other world. And that generates strong emotions.
Over the last 5 years, we've probably had several million people who've used virtual environments for addressing pain, for learning social skills, if they're on the autism spectrum, to improve their mood and to help address social anxiety disorders.
So after years of intrepid research and positive results, can clinical virtual reality become a mainstream component of modern healthcare?
So the next use case is interesting because it uses virtual reality and a simulated breastfeeding experience, which has been created by Kai-Meng Tang, and it allows mothers to practice breastfeeding techniques.
Virtual Feed is a simulated breastfeeding experience in VR. Our simulation was designed with parents and healthcare professionals to convey key aspects of breastfeeding and the delicate nature of the feeding relationship. In our simulation, a user can breastfeed a virtual baby by interacting with a tangible doll. We crafted 2 breastfeeding scenarios, each portraying different levels of external influence on the feeding experience.
And in 2016, Erin Martucci was among one of the first women to experience virtual reality during childbirth, as she wanted to deliver her baby girl without an epidural, narcotics, or any other drugs for the labor pain. So her doctor, Ralph Anderson, introduced her to VR and a calming beach scene where the soothing audio gave her breathing instructions, which really helped her through the most difficult parts of labor. Okay, we have just hit a glitch with the video. Right, that has frozen in the middle. I may have to stop screen share and then come back to this again, okay? So if you can just bear with me.
And that's grand. And just for anyone listening, this is a wee quirk between Zoom and Keynote. Sometimes this happens, so I just enjoy a bit of silence while Deepa gets the presentation.
All right, let's try this.
Up and running.
Here we go. So in another example, VR is being used as pain relief and exploratory visualization for children. And it draws upon two basic principles in terms of brain function has been developed by Jeffrey Gold, a pioneer in adapting VR at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. The first principle is like a top-down inhibition, where we all have the capacity to turn down pain signals once we know that the signal is no longer harmful, dangerous, or hurtful. And that's how our brain operates on purpose. It's not just a distraction. It's actually our brain stopping a pain signal at the spinal cord before it can fire all the way up to the frontal lobe. Second, there is an analgesic effect from endorphins. So if we're in a gaming environment and we're having fun and laughing and giggling, then we're releasing endorphins and causing a neurochemical reaction at the synaptic level of the brain. Another aspect of what makes VR effective is called a cognitive load, where we have to learn and do something. But VR is not a one-size-fits-all. Programs and patients have to be evaluated to understand what works best for each use case.
Hi, I'm Jade, I'm 10 years old. I'm like the family's daredevil. I like doing a lot of sports, playing with my brothers and doing science experiments. I had a seizure. At first they just thought it was a daydreaming, right? Then it happened a few more times. Then I got a little bit scared.
We noticed she was having a harder time focusing on schoolwork.
That initiated a whole sequence of events that led her to me. I'm Curtis Augusti. I'm a pediatric neurosurgeon. I work at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, both on our San Francisco campus and in our Oakland campus. Jade's problem was a tumor underneath a superhighway of nerves that control her vision. And you need to see where all those bends and twists and turns are, but you also need to see them in 3 dimensions. I became aware of Surgical Theater 360 VR. We immediately saw the utility of it and how it could benefit our practice and our patients.
I can actually move in, and I could actually feel like I could touch it. It's just really cool.
They saw for themselves, with their own eyes, this very clear path to the problem.
Seeing it in 3D, really get a sense of what doctor and the whole team has to look at.
I think that gave them a tremendous amount of comfort.
To actually see where the blood vessels are, it's really fascinating.
For Jade's case, there were 2 primary options to get to this one location, coming from the front and coming from behind. After our 360 VR fly-through, we actually saw that the safer path was from behind. Jade's surgery was in November 2017. She flew through her recovery, not just in the hospital, but after she got home.
After I saw the VR headset with the tumor gone, I felt amazed. I felt relieved. And like myself again.
I'm very thankful that the surgical theater and 3D technology made us more comfortable, which made Jade more comfortable. Words can't describe what Dr. Augusti did for this family. We've got Jade back.
360 VR is groundbreaking. It's innovative. You can prepare for a surgery the traditional way, use a 2-dimensional platform, but why would you? If you can rehearse in 3 dimensions, the entire surgery start to finish and see things that you don't usually see.
I feel really great. I'm just really happy today.
So David Rue talks about how we are at the cutting edge of therapeutic VR. And in this MRI image showing what happens in the brain when we use VR to control pain, you can clearly see on the image that VR reduces sensory pain. There are fewer pain signals and less emotional pain. but at the same time, the positive areas of resilience and cognitive processing are increased. So in effect, there is a double whammy effect. Less perceived pain combined with the positive effect of increased resilience. And where developments in VR and health are really exciting is where you use VR to do the things that only it can do and to solve real problems. And I will explain what I mean through this VR vaccine app made in Brazil. It's very clever in understanding the psychology of user experience.
This is VR Vaccine. The VR Vaccine is an immersive adventure where the children become a hero about to receive a powerful shield. To make it work, we need one VR gear, one smartphone for the children, one for the nurse, and the VR Vaccine app.
Oi! Você voltou! Você voltou!
And what the children experience in the virtual world is matched step by step by the nurse that follows the story on a second screen.
Pronto. Agora o fruto de fogo. Mas ó, vamos lá. Bem rapidinho. Peraí.
All simultaneously calming and entertaining children while helping the nurses to better perform the vaccination.
Funciona, funciona, funciona! Obrigada, obrigada! Caramba, filho, o que você acha disso? Legal.
So one of my latest projects, as Nuala referenced earlier on, is more creative, and it's called Augmented Reality Street Art, which has been launched for free on Apple and Android. And that has been a response in terms of how we can maintain tourism during COVID. So it's AR based on street art found in Belfast in Dunbar Street. And I think it's interesting that we're still in the early stages of the adoption of augmented reality. And at the moment, there's a rush to create apps and experiences that are often too focused on showing off its technical capability or dominated by marketing and advertising. And a question that I'm really interested in exploring is, how can we use augmented reality to redefine a digital space for positive action and move seamlessly between the digital and the physical space? So here is a trailer just to give you an idea of what AR street art app is like. So another one of our projects is called Suru, which is an AR experience which assesses how physical and digital objects and information can coexist, interact and complement each other through the layering of content over real world applications. And AR has the power to reshape the way we remember history in public spaces. So Cooper Way is one of 97 peace walls that are found in Northern Ireland. And it's a location for this new and exciting AR experience called AR Peaceful. This is a twinning project between Belfast and Hiroshima, and it uses the international symbol for peace, the crane, which is called suru in Japanese. And in this experience, the viewer sees the digital removal of the wall to reveal the story of a little boy on the morning of the day the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, 6th of August, 1945. And we've used specially commissioned animation and soundtrack. So Suru replaces the peace wall with a story of survival, recovery, and unity. And in Hiroshima, many of the trees that were affected by the atomic bomb actually survived heat emitted by the explosion, which was 40 times greater than the heat of the sun. And those trees epitomized peace in the aftermath of the bomb and in rebuilding a razed city. Now, in contrast, in Belfast, we've built walls to manage our conflicts and to create notions of safety and redefine public spaces. So I'd like to play a short piece from Suru, just to give you an idea of this. This will be available on the App Store as well soon and will be free. So while technology offers solutions that does give people choice, the use of technology can also enable people to share their experiences, and in doing so give hope and enable people to feel human again. Effective VR and AR teaches people skills they can use in real life. So this is where I draw my story to an end, and I come full circle to another photograph of my mother and father. My mother has suffered from chronic pain for 26 years, and this is her reaction to using BreatheVR for the first time. What do you think of it?
It's just bloody hell, I tell you. Pardon me, I use this word quite often when I'm happy and when I'm angry as well, but this is relaxing. It's really, really bloody hell.
So I believe technology will finally give people choice that people like my mother have not been afforded to date. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Deepa. I have to say, every time I hear you speak, I'm always so impressed by the beauty of your work, but also your ability to draw in so much into in so much content to make a really kind of accessible and powerful presentation on technology. I'm not sure even in our space we have anyone else who does it as well as you do. So after not having heard you do do a piece like this, in a while. I'm quite taken, quite taken aback, and just love the whole storytelling aspect and how you started, with your own family and progressed right through. And I just wondered, so there are a lot of people on this call or watching on Facebook that possibly haven't thought about how experimental or new emerging technology can support the parenting journey. And in the context of Talking Sense, Talking Sense, even if you could explain, I think, as a starting point, some of the very grounded aspects and how you developed that app and actually co-created it with people working with the parents of children with autism. I think I think the way that your work is so grounded, theoretically driven, and also authentically developed with the people who kind of, who it is designed to help. I think even that story would be beneficial for people to hear before I ask my next question about the app.
Right. So the idea for Talking Sense was developed as a result of talking with parents of children with autism, and also with talking with expert psychologists that have worked with parents and children with autism for the past 30 years. And there is applied behavior analysis, which uses simple steps. It's a web-based application to help parents in terms of understanding behaviors. And for us, Talking Sense, I worked with Stephen and Mickey at Ulster University and Brian and Alec. So there was a whole Ulster University team in terms of the psychology, the programming, and the animation to see would an augmented reality version of this training tool actually be more effective than a web-based version, because it's accessible on people's phones. You can play with it in your own time. And what was interesting, I think for me, one of the interesting aspects of this is when you come to test something, you can't anticipate the unintended consequences, and they can be positive and negative, and that's why it's really important to test. So one of the unintended positive outcomes was that parents reported back that actually this is a really useful training tool for extended family. If parents wanted to go out and they wanted to leave babysitters with their children, or grandparents, and that's something that I hadn't thought about at the outset. And they also fed back that they would find other scenarios really interesting as well, and to also have the option of having a female character, although I think it's sort of an 80-20 ratio split in terms of autism and gender impact, that it does predominantly affect boys more, but there's probably an underreporting in terms of girls as well, because it's just not immediately recognized. And then in talking with you, Nuala, as well, you kind of, it was interesting, I hadn't thought about this. You kind of said, well, this is actually a really interesting parenting tool, because it's a really safe way of practicing with a child. And in the video that I played, Ben has a meltdown because, as a parent, you've said the wrong thing. And it is much more comfortable for that to happen in an animated experience than to have that happen in real life. I think every single parent on the planet will have experienced that at some point. I know I have. So that's hopefully that's answered part of your question. And another experience that is still in development, the Discover Emmy, where I'm working with Joan McParland, who runs Fibro for Me in Newry. That's been completely led by co-design principles, and that is Joan's voice that you heard in that video piece, and she wrote and scripted that piece. The project's been delayed by COVID, but we're hopefully going to see that finish by the end of August.
That you kind of neatly led into where I was going with raising Talking Sense, because it was back to when you had shown it, the first time I saw Talking Sense, and really thought from all of the, I had the privilege of attending Sure Start parenting programs, which not everyone has access to because it's targeted at lower socioeconomic areas. And as part of the Sure Start area that I was in, I had access to lots of parenting programs that kind of encouraged you to think about communication and how children feel. And the other night, myself and Laura, another Breastville board member, were discussing gentle parenting, and it very much fits into that gentle parenting space, and understanding emotions and emotional response. So I definitely feel that it is something that any parent could access, in the comfort of their own home, and particularly as children grow and change, because sometimes, when I see Rasha growing, she does change, and how we communicate may change as part of that. And wouldn't it, I just think having something close to hand that you could look at and test different scenarios and look at what the potential emotional outcome could be would be an extremely powerful tool to have in your parenting toolbox.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And it is about, it's funny, isn't it? We don't get much support in terms of parenting. You're just expected to be able to do it. And I'm not sure where that knowledge is meant to magically happen and appear, and it is trial and error. I did not have access to anything like Sure Start when we had our first child. I had my in-laws around me for support, but I didn't have my mother close by. So it was very much trial and error. And yet for so many other aspects of our life, you're supported and you're trained and you're educated. So it is remarkable that there is so little support in terms of parenting, or and what that's going to be like. And unfortunately, I guess the eldest child is the one that you train by, hopefully. And you can see it in all families, can't you, the difference between the first and second child, and how relaxed people are by the time they've had a second child.
Thanks. No, I think you raised really important points. And last night we had a discussion around perinatal mental health, and there was an emphasis on that around a lot of anxiety around kind of first pregnancies, and the way, there's so much in the work that you do that could be applied to any well-being setting, and there are some people who have raised points in the chat. So rather than me dominate the discussion, I have Maria. So the way that we do this is I will ask Maria if she wants to unmute and make her comment herself. Otherwise, I can read it out. So Maria, you're here. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I didn't even have a question. I am just sitting here in absolute awe because I find everything you've put up there mind-blowing. I think sometimes as parents, personally anyway, we tend to view technology as the devil. And, the less we use around our kids, the less we get into that world, like more natural parenting and whatever else. But the positive implications that it can have, like in those scenarios you've shown, have just left me sitting here going, oh my God, what a contribution to the world. So well done is pretty much all I want to say on that.
Thanks, Maria. And Ruth is also on the call. So I'm just going to ask Ruth if you would like to unmute and make your comment, or if you, not just to stay quiet if you prefer.
Yeah, I was just saying about, well, it's probably similar to what Maria just said. It's quite incredible what all you've shared there this evening. But I guess it also made a wee point about, could it be used in preparation for birth, particularly people who had previous birth traumas and so on, to kind of reframe their experience a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I would, in terms of, it is, I think Nuala used a really good phrase, a tool and a toolbox. and not everything is going to suit everybody all the time. So it's a case of trying and seeing if it works for you. So for some people, it's music, it's movies, it's reading a book. And I think what's interesting about this technology is if some people find it difficult to relax, as a starter, it can maybe help and give them direction in terms of relaxation and deep breathing. And then what you can do is actually create muscle memory in your body so that, you know, the technology is there to support you. And then at some point, you perhaps don't need it all the time. It's done its job in terms of creating that muscle memory. But I think I would just, the cost of VR has continued to come down to try it and to experiment.
Thank you, Deepa. So Kira has also made a comment, and it links to Ruth's comment. Kira, would you like to unmute and make your comment?
Hi. It's amazing. Thanks so much. Really good presentation. Myself was sitting here in awe as well, looking at the videos. Just thinking back yesterday, just about tandem feeding, that a lot of talk about aversion came up, and I suppose the negative things with breastfeeding, like DMAR, and just thinking, and as well, like labor wise, it's reminding me of like hypnobirthing, when you're trying to imagine yourself at a beach in the middle of labor. So it must be amazing for labor, and just kind of thinking, you know, if women are experiencing that, they could try, but like you were saying, you kind of answered it already, try and see kind of thing.
I mean, get a headset and try it for yourself, you know, if because I don't think a hospital would stop you, you know, bringing it in if it's part of your relaxation. And that's probably going to be one of the environments, I mean, in terms of labor, where they're perhaps already more open to women using different support techniques already. But I think hospitals are quite challenging to kind of bring, the NHS is challenging actually in terms of adopting innovation, you know, so I would encourage people just to try it for themselves. It'll be much quicker.
Thanks, Deepa. So now I have a comment from Jennifer, who is the founder of BreatheVR, just in relation to looking at parenting tools.
Hi, Deepa. Thanks so much. I'm in the middle of bedtime meltdowns and lying in the dark with a small person here beside me. But that was so interesting and sparked so many different connections and thoughts for me. So the experience of VR around birth and labour is really interesting. So for me, I had an experience of using hypnobirthing with my most recent birth, and very much hypnobirthing and visualizations were hugely helpful. And I can imagine that VR just adds that level of immersion, and so you have that reality, and so your brain can completely switch into that reality. Because there are definitely moments, you know, in labor process that you can enter into that very relaxed state, but then there's other people around and things are happening, whereas in a VR reality that you're completely transported, and there's no kind of break or somebody kind of pulling you out of that scenario. But the other thing that reminded me of was a project that I'm a psychologist is my background, and I worked with Take 10 a number of years ago. And so it's that similar kind of process of that kind of biofeedback and being able to control the visual that, you know, for a child to be able to see. So, and particularly for children that they might struggle with processing language or processing instructions, but that they can manipulate a virtual reality world without having to have that, you know, verbal instructions, that they have to kind of interact with something, or if they have a physical disability, but they can move around in a virtual world. It's amazing. But I think my comment in the chat was around parenting. So the session where Nuala and Laura had been talking about gentle parenting, there's a tendency, and I know myself, that when you try very hard to be as gentle as you can be as a parent, but obviously you never achieve that perfection. And then when you're kind of under situations of stress, there's a tendency to kind of fall back into the patterns that you experienced as a child and, you know, your own parenting. And so, yeah, I'm just interested in the potential of VR to put people under stress so that they can practice responses in that safe environment, but so that they are deliberately being put under stress in order to kind of retrain your automatic responses.
That's actually a really interesting question, and it is actually it's quite an accurate observation, because where VR is really, really interesting and effective is in those low frequency, high risk scenarios, so that you can practice. And a video that I have that I didn't share tonight was there is a company that has developed a VR training surgery environment, but it's for people to practice on children in VR. Because you imagine a scenario where a child comes in and it's a life or death scenario. You've got a parent in the room, you've got so many different people, and then having to keep your cool and to treat the child appropriately. And to be able to do that in VR is really, really useful. There's studies that have shown that even for surgeons to warm up in VR before they start a day of actual real life surgery improves their efficacy and outcomes throughout the day. And then services like fire people, in terms of enabling them to train in scenarios, or the police service, enabling them to experience real life scenarios. And no doubt the army and the military are also using it as well, because unfortunately, a lot of the R&D money tends to come from the military first and foremost, because they're looking at use of new technologies for other reasons. So absolutely, these, I think it's a really, really well made observation. And there are so many more companies coming on stream all the time at the moment. 5 years ago when I started working in this space, it was kind of hard to find a range of examples, whereas now there's companies coming out every day, and it's becoming easier and easier for people to access. I think where there's going to be massive growth is augmented reality, because you'll be able to access that from your phone. And that means that technology is democratic in terms of being able to be accessible by everybody. And it's something I think that will be second nature for any child born today and growing up, because all phones will have that capability very, very soon.
Thanks, Deepa. And I'm just going to do a wee time check with you. I'm aware that there are other people who have comments in the chat. Are you okay to continue for a little while, just till we go through just to make sure that the people who are interacting get their chance to speak to you? And we'll maybe aim to finish in about 20 minutes or so, if that's okay. Just conscious that for many people, this is the first time they'll be interacting and speaking to someone who's developing work in your space. So I'm just keen that everyone gets a chance to raise their points. So Nikita is on the call, and Nikita, you had a comment in the chat. So I'm just checking in as to whether you'd like to unmute and share at the minute. So just, I'm going to read Nikita. Oh, here we are. Nikita, it's okay. Go on
Sorry,
ahead.
I think Deepa kind of covered it previously for some of the other comments, but just to say thank you, Deepa, that was really fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikita. And then I have Catherine. So I'm just going to ask Catherine to unmute.
Thanks, Nuala. And then just to follow up with everybody else, thank you so much, Deepa, for tonight. I suppose what I am really interested in, and I'm sure quite a few people now that they have become interested in VR this evening, what would you say would be a good entry point to be getting involved with using VR, whether that be through your breathing app or other options?
I would kind of, they're really, the cheapest is like a Google Cardboard, which you fold it into basically like a pair of cardboard glasses that can hold your phone. And then if you go on to the, depending on whether you have an Android phone or an Apple phone, go to the App Store and look for free VR experiences, and try that. That's the cheapest, low-cost way of testing. Now, for a really small percentage of people, VR will not suit them. You may get motion sickness. And if that's the case, don't use it. So there are certain things, I'm okay with most of it, but there are certain instances, if the VR is moving in a way that's really unnatural, your brain just does not like it and it will cause motion sickness. So, and that's not a very pleasant feeling. So do not persevere if that happens. And then you can kind of upgrade, there's the Oculus Quest, which has come out, but that retails for about £260, but it's an all-in-one headset. The quality is superb. You get some free apps on that, but there's an awful lot of apps that you also have to buy. And there are many other VR headsets on the market. One of the problems, actually, I think as a layperson, is the variety of headsets, and that not all of the apps are compatible with all of the headsets, which has never made any sense to me. And then, excuse me, I've developed my app for the Oculus Store, but that will become redundant soon because it needs further work for it to be suitable for the Quest now. And that's also frustrating as somebody that's invested time and money into actually producing an app. And I built BreatheVR also to use on Gear VR, which is a slightly nicer version of the cardboard, and it gives you quite a pleasant experience, but that's been stopped as well. And I did that with cost in mind, knowing that people living in chronic pain are often on disability living allowance, so don't have an awful lot of disposable income, and that the Gear VR headset secondhand could be purchased for about £20. So that's kind of really, really frustrating. But hopefully that helps, Catherine.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
Thanks, Deepa. And I just wanted to pick up on a comment previously, which is around the funding sources for some of the research in immersive technology and new and emerging technology as well. And that's another area that you're really strong in, because everything that you do is focused on being ethical and democratic, which is really, you've emphasized tonight when you showed, your mixed reality experiences, that they are free and accessible to people. And I just wondered if you wanted to talk a bit more about some of the challenges in approaching technology from that perspective, in a world where many people are pursuing either profit or questionable sources of funding.
So I suppose in Northern Ireland, I'm really fortunate to have the company to be based and living here, and Future Screens and I has been so important in terms of the development of the immersive sector in Northern Ireland and the creative industries. And I've been really fortunate in terms of being able to access some of that funding. And I think and obviously tech for good is my driving motivation, and it's kind of my value basis. I did in 2018 get into the whole tech investment hamster wheel, because I was fortunate enough to get on an accelerator. But that world measures success in terms of money rather than impact in terms of what you're making and the positive impact it's having either on the environment or people or society. I think it's beginning to change. I think COVID and the past year has quickened society's response in terms of wanting to trigger change more quickly. I mean, we absolutely have to in terms of the climate crisis. And there is a movement, I think, that is growing in terms of using technology for good that has a positive impact, and creating communities and congregations around it. So that is growing. I mean, BreatheVR did have a price. I think it was like £2.29 or $2.99. It was really, really low. It's interesting if you, in terms of psychology, sometimes if something is free, people tend to undervalue how good it is. So there's a really interesting psychology around it as well. But so with the AR experiences, and in terms of learning from the BreatheVR and launching that and actually having a price point around that, it was never going to make a huge amount of money. So it kind of seems pointless to, in hindsight, charge for it. So that's why it's been really interesting to be able to launch the augmented reality experiences for free on the App Store. And it is about encouraging virtual tourism. And, you know, I suppose the opportunities for me are to do really cutting edge research development. There's an opportunity to work in a really collaborative way with companies, and with Suru, I was able to work with Aura Digital, who are a young company that's been founded out of the animation course at Ulster University. And they are amazing. You know, they've got an amazing future ahead of them. They were so professional to work with. And it was wonderful that I was able to allocate kind of the funding on my project in terms of commissioning that work. And they delivered it to such a high standard. So has that answered your question? I kind of feel as if I've gone a bit off track.
Oh, it has, Deepa. And even watching the bit of Siri that you shared, and obviously I've seen it, like not in the immersive way, but I have saw the story of it, and when you were sharing it, I was just wanting to watch more because it is so enthralling and it's so beautifully done. And I guess just before we end the call, because it's a project that really emerged out of some of the questions that you were asking about place and identity and peace. If you just want to kind of share some of the aspects of that you had explored when you were developing the project.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The digital world that exists around us. I don't know if people here tonight have seen Minority Report, a Tom Cruise film where the character at one point is bombarded by advertising that is personalized and targeted. And there is a lot of investment going into the digital space by big brand companies because they're looking to use it as a vehicle for advertising. But what's really interesting for me is that, there's that sense of digital litter, how we maintain that space, but who owns the digital space around us? And can it be used to reimagine a contested space in a really safe way? You can have a multitude of interpretations of a contested space within the digital sphere, whereas in the physical sphere, it only has one manifestation. So Suru is my imagining of what removing the Peace Wall in Cooper Way could look like. And it was obviously inspired by Hiroshima and that twinning project. But if you were to take a child living or children living on either side of the wall, they may reimagine something completely different. And it becomes then a really interesting tool for cities in terms of engaging with the citizens and its local populations in terms of visioning spaces, you know, and how they want cities to develop, and story building and building worlds. And all citizens can participate in it. And I think it's a really powerful tool that we're only beginning to kind of scratch the capabilities of. And I want more and more people to be able to do it in a way that is not targeted at getting as much money out of you as possible, or getting you to buy the latest pair of trainers or clothing or whatever. Because that is a really powerful tool. Maybe in health, augmented reality can be used for doctors to explain perhaps what's wrong with a person. You know, it's just endless. The possibilities actually become endless.
Just before we finish, Catherine put something into the chat. So I'm going to bring Catherine in, because we've been talking a lot about the influence of industry and advertising all week. So Catherine, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the final word before we say good night.
Yeah, well, I was just saying, when you're talking about the advertising litter that comes up in our lives all the time, and I think particularly this week we have just seen it so much with the marketing for formula companies across what is supposed to be a supportive week for breastfeeding families and families that are interested in breastfeeding, where the theme has been shared responsibility, and they have taken that really important message and used it as a marketing campaign for themselves. And I just think your word, it's about us taking back ownership of that power and going out there and using that to change the ecosystem around us when it comes to that marketing. And I think that's an empowering message to come from your session tonight. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Catherine. And I suppose just as we leave, Festival is considering branching into new and emerging and immersive technology, so everyone can watch this space and see what happens next following on from this discussion. And Deepa, thank you so much. As I said previously, I'm always completely overwhelmed by how your presentations are always amazing and so distinct. And I really think that this one is one that we should take to Future Tuesdays. And engage with our more technology audience to raise some of the themes that were discussed tonight, because it was so beautifully pitched. And I loved the ending with your mum. I loved the ending with your mum. I thought it was brilliant. One of my favorite memories of my mum is a voice message I just discovered after she passed away. Of when she was coming to pick me up from the airport, and a lorry had got too close behind her. And this, I must have been changing phones, and I just happened across this message, and I couldn't say it in a live audience about what my mummy was saying. But when I heard your mum, it just made me think of this phone message that my mum left for me. And it's really nice just even to be in a position to share those personal experiences with you, for you to share your story with us. So thank you also for that, and we hope to see you soon. So good night, everyone.